Yes, we're here. Good morning, SOUQ morning. Every day is a new opportunity to make it happen. Keep pushing at it until something happens. No, it's not the devil, it's all you. Welcome to the show. It's SOUQ Business Landscape on your favorite business station, SOUQ News Television. My name is Mbah. We'll take that break. You know what that break is for. Something sippy, hot or warm to keep you in the loop. Stay here. Yes, welcome back. It's still SOUQ Business Landscape. We jump right to the business of today. Before we do that, we want to let you know we're excited. You missed him last time we were here, and this time there's no opportunity for that. Dr. Osamhanze is in the house. How are you doing, Doc?
Good Nigeria, great Africa. It's a good SOUQ morning.
You look like a presidential northerner in government. I like the look.
Well, here you come again.
You know I was going to follow that. If you have gotten that call, you know that call will come.
This is Nigeria. We are Nigerians.
Where anything can happen. Let me finish it like that. All right, guys, we're here. We'll jump right up to the business of the day with Business Day Nigeria. 4 ways FX-starved Nigeria can boost oil inputs. 4 ways, Doc. They had to give us just 4.
Yeah, I think the struggle is continuing. The Naira, with all the effort being made by CBN to see how to get it stable, refuses to be stable. And I think that's the real challenge that the economists will face right now, and saying, what can we do? Because, of course, you see, when the macroeconomic environment is not stable, it's not favorable for investment, and investors won't want to bring in money.
That's right.
And so I think here now people are thinking about creative ways that we can work around stabilizing the Naira so that a really needed fund can come into that sector. The oil sector needs some boost in Nigeria. We cannot emphasize that enough, that for a population of over 200 million, that we are not able to produce up to 2 million barrels a day is quite a huge challenge that needs to be dealt with.
When you say creative ways, are there, because I feel like what I've been doing, there's a streamlined way we're doing everything. So when you say creative ways, are there outside the box thinking?
Yeah, but I think that's a real work to happen because like people have always argued, Nigerian situation had defied all economic models and principles that exist. So it's quite unfortunate that that's how we find ourselves. So we are not predictive. And you cannot really sit down to say, okay, I want to take an analysis of what is happening. So we must be inventive to see how we can leverage maybe human power or brain power to be able to think outside of the box or without the box at all, and see how we can bring the needed fund to come into the environment. But I think it's quite important that those who run the upstream sector of Nigerian economy must also be up and doing to see what other nations have been able to do successfully to galvanize the needed resource to make that sector really very fruitful. But I think by and large, we do hope that, like we promised some few days ago, that the government is working around the clock to see how to get that macroeconomic environment very stable that will allow for inflow of revenue. You know, like they say, the world is a global village today. There's nothing you can actually hide from anybody. No matter how much you try to paint yourself and, you know, but like they say, the taste of the pudding is always in the eating. So people see what is not going well, and of course that will not make people to come to that environment. We need to clean up really. And if our politics become more hygienic, I think a lot of things can change for us.
I agree totally. And we must, like you said, we must break down that box and begin to think not just inside of it, outside of it. IMF urges structural reforms to improve Nigeria's growth outlook. IMF urges structural reforms to improve Nigeria's growth outlook. As the minister says, investors are relishing opportunities in Nigeria.
Yeah. I think we cannot say that enough. Though a lot of people have argued against structural adjustment program, which of course IMF introduced in Nigeria in 1986, and a whole lot of things really did not work. People felt that the problem that we faced was as a result of the structural adjustment. But I have a different opinion completely, because I feel that for African really to grow, growing up as a young student, I used to enjoy all the thinking around dependency theories propounded by most Latin American authors, Frantz Fanon's of this world, Walter Rodney, and the rest of it, that Africa wasn't developing because there were too much interference from the West. But as I grew up now, I discovered that it's not just about the interference, it's just the fact that there are some certain aspects of us that really need to die if we must emerge as an economy. Because it's not just about what the West is doing or not doing. It's more about the nature of the average Nigerian or the black man. That's actually the real problem. And so, and I think Lee Kuan Yew captured that very well in his book. So he called it the third world mentality. And until we take away the third world mentality from people, we will not be able to emerge as an economy. So which means from the modernization perspective, there are actually some certain structural constraints, cultural constraints that is making us not to actualize those potentials that God has given to us. So it's in dealing with those potentials really that we can see the transformation. So IMF is right when they say, look, we need to address some of the culture or the structure that's actually making or slowing down economic growth in Africa. I am also happy to say that yesterday the president signed an order that also trying to see how to drop down the cost of governance, which of course a lot of people have spoken to quite a whole lot of time. Why we are trying to reduce the consumption, we see that even government officials are still living too large. So, but yesterday, I think the president said that he want the cost of governance go down a little bit, so that no junior minister can, or a head of agency can use a convoy of more than 3 cars. So I think that's a step in the right direction. So, but you see, once you don't deal with those structures, I am asking myself, we have over 47 ministers. We don't need that.
We don't.
American is just about, American is 100 million more than us in terms of population, but yet 13 or 16 secretaries run America. And things doesn't fall down. So we must find a way to address those issues that are eating deep into the fortunes of the nation. And that's the only way really to grow.
We must.
Yeah.
We must. We veer off from Business Day Nigeria onto the East, the Horn of Africa. Business Daily Kenya. KRA 2-track motorist fuel use with eTIMS link. Every purchase will now be accompanied with a receipt. And this integration also is aimed at curbing fictitious VATs, claims that companies are making. And how successful can something like this be?
Yeah, I think they've successfully had done that to integrate the system so that as people are making purchases, you can actually, in real time, government get the revenue. Because one of the big problems that Africa really suffer is the fact that there's so much in terms of revenue leakages. And because of these leakages, we are not able to really galvanize the needed resource that will transform the continent. And I believe that really the way to go is technology. And I think this is what the Kenya authorities, tax authorities are doing to see how to block all those leakages and ensure that government gets all the revenue that is due it. And I don't think, if you look at it across Africa, really, we are not taking up to 60% of the revenue that should be going to the government. And this still stays in the hands of private individuals. But when you look at it from the point of view of the West, you see those people have been able to close almost all gap. So you hardly will see people evading tax. But in Africa, there's so much evasion of tax. And I think that's one of the things that every government in Africa must look into. So the Kenya Revenue Authority is doing a good job here to see how do we track the percentage of PMS or diesel so that the value-added taxes that are attached to it gets into the hands of government. You know, it may even surprise you to know that there are some agencies or companies who collect this VAT on behalf of government and they never really remit it.
Oh, yes.
So that is it. They take the tax, but they don't remit. And I think all of that have to find a way to end. And the only way to do that is when, of course, we can integrate the entire system into technology, and e-government will solve that problem for Africa.
Hopefully so. But why is it easy for tax evasion to happen? Especially in our climes, we're talking Africa, we're talking Nigeria.
Yeah, it is easy because
out there, it's quick. They put the clamp down because they can see.
Yeah, the starting point really for development, and I have said this time without number, and I really wish that the current government in Africa can actually prioritize that. The first thing is to know where everybody lives, and that can only be done by national identification. So we have not successfully identified ourselves, so we don't even know where we are. And that also coupled with the fact that there's lack of synergy between government agencies. And so because there's no synergy between government agencies, it is difficult for government to really track down who is who in the environment. You take, for example, people buy vehicles and they go to road safety, for example, if it's in Nigeria, to go get plate number, to go get driver's license. All that is needed by those authorities not to ask to create a new database. It's to ask anybody who is going to register a vehicle to supply his NIN.
Right.
That is as simple as that.
And it's less cumbersome. It's
Yeah.
less,
So anybody who want to open a bank account, supply your NIN. But you see, here, you have multiplicity of this data.
yes.
Immigration is keeping their own data.
Confusing.
Road safety is keeping their own data. Customs keeping their own data. Banks keeping their own data. Now, all this data, we have not been able to harmonize them. And that's why people can still hide under some certain guise. Because if NIN become, for example, the only credible means of identification, it will be difficult for people to hide under any guise.
True.
It will make crime monitoring and control easy. Issues of corruption that we are talking about will die naturally.
Because you know you can be.
Yeah, because whatever thing you do, except you are not going to renew your vehicle license. So if you have 84 vehicles, it will show on the system of road safety. Because they will be tied to one name.
All of them.
Yeah. If you have 20 houses, it will be tied to one name.
And you can be tracked.
Yeah. So if you are using physician's name, or you are using process, for example, and people can look at this guy that his name is on this vehicle, his account can be tracked and see, is there any income coming in every month, working,
True.
business?
Laundering can be checked.
So it will make it very easy for EFCC to be able to do their work effectively. So, but unfortunately, we have not been able to deal with this data issue in Africa. And I think that's the biggest problem we have. So a lot of people are just there. All they do is that they can use any name. I was sharing with somebody the other time and I said, I found out somebody that even people who change their names to open bank accounts, people go on the portal to modify their data.
That's true.
You know?
I was having this conversation recently. You know, when we talked about not being able to use a phone number, if it isn't registered. But those things are still happening
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have some prank callers, not prank callers, calls that will come. I copy the number, go to Truecaller to check, and there's no name.
Yeah.
And it's functioning.
So you see, people use fake name to register their SIM.
Because of the intent.
Yeah.
There's been intent before that.
Yeah, but the real reason is because we have not been able to sync this data. You imagine that the NIN portal is open to telcos. So when you want to register your telephone number, nobody asks you to fill any form. They just ask you your ID. That's what is required. They kill the ID into the system.
Everything they need.
Everything about you come. And they use it in registration and they give you your SIM and you just go. So people cannot fake their identity.
True.
You have somebody, his name is Chukwudi, and you see, if you use even Truecaller to track that name on the number, you will see Green Africa. So these are the kind of things that you see in the environment. And that's because we have not been able to sync our data.
So, but you know, even before you get to the point of syncing, even the collating is an issue.
Yeah, but you see,
Conversations, look, let me point this out. Where this, during the census, we're having this conversation, and one of my young friends was a part of it. And they said, in the north, somewhere in the north, they get to a house, and there's this sign they have that says Bashika, don't enter. And they can't go in to count. So they look at them, they said they should count the amount of footwears that are outside. Now, you have people visiting. You have people that have come from maybe neighbors or relatives. So you count a bunch of people. Meanwhile, whereas there's just maybe 2 people that live in the household. So those things.
yeah, but because we have refused to integrate technology into some of our things. I remember when I was applying for a permit in the UAE to stay, you have to capture, for example.
Of course, because it's the first time.
In short, as a matter of fact, they don't take just your finger. Even the back of your hand is scanned. So that in case there's deformity and the rest of it, the side, everywhere is captured. That's a whole. So that's the way system works.
True.
If you say somebody is in the house and it cannot be counted and it cannot thumbprint, then of course the data will not be captured.
Yep, that's what the issue is.
And if there's a point now, this person who cannot be captured, he wants to get into school, he can't get into school. He wants to open a bank account, he cannot open, or even if he have a bank account and he can no longer operate the bank account.
Problems.
Nobody will tell that person. It is not government that should be looking for these people. They will be the one looking for government.
Fix this problem.
Yeah. So that's why we have to really enable technology to drive the entire process, not having to stay under the guise of cultural inhibitions. In 21st century, that somebody said they cannot be numbered, and therefore you can just go around and say, no, they don't map things like that. People, if they have to do national identification, they have to be captured. Their thumbprint, their fingerprints, their facial ID have to be taken to show that they are the real person doing this thing. Otherwise, access to basic facilities of government will be denied. Now, if you get to a hospital, for example, if you are sick, and you don't have an ID, it will be difficult for you to be treated. Mm-hmm. So these are issues. So when to tie these things to incentive or incentivize them, people can't run away from it.
You're right, Doc. And we look forward to this happening hopefully soon. Still on Business Daily, governors, cabinet secretaries hit as Treasury caps cars. You know, when you were commenting on the last topic we're talking about, this came to mind. So they said they'll be assigned only 2 cars. This governors were talking about here. And the members of their boards will only use their private cars, not even the government cars now. And there's this radical change is something that Treasury is enforcing.
You know, I heard this for the first time. I think it was in Rwanda the other day, and somebody told me there are only 4 categories of people that has official car in Rwanda. The president 2 cars, his deputy a car, the head of the judiciary a car, and the head of parliament a car. Every other person use their personal car to come to work. So don't have the luxury. Because when you look at our budget, for example, in Africa, you see the cost of overhead. It's massive. And so when you see people quote some figure for cost of buying petrol, somebody will be wondering and say, really? What? But when you really want to look at it in the real sense of the word, if you're driving for 3 kilometers and you're going to fill your tank, especially at the current rate, if 10 cars are involved or 20 cars are involved, you know how much that is. So it's substantial. So if you run that in a week, you run that in a month, it dips into the resource that should be used. And what really do people need this car for? Just to move from place to place. That's all. But unfortunately now fashion has entered into it, that your color of your clothes has to match the color of your car. And these are really terrible times for us as a people.
That is so painful to hear. Lastly, on this publication, IFC equity in 2.6 billion shillings refugee inclusion deal. So the IFC International Finance Corporation announces this amount risk sharing facility for Equity Bank of Kenya, and they're dedicated to their financials that has to do with refugees. And this is a lot of money, and it's showing that they care about those refugees and them not causing problems in their country.
This issue of refugee in Africa, I think we can, if it's possible to really deal with it.
Where are these refugees? Let's say
but people are running away from trouble.
Where are they from? They're going into Kenya.
Not just Kenya, it's all across the globe.
I mean, like for Kenya now, who are the refugees? Is it that you are doing badly? You are doing worse off than Kenya is doing, or you're in Nigeria, come to Nigeria to have refugees?
Yeah, but for those who are facing terrible challenge.
If it was in the West, I understand.
Terrible challenge. Not many people could go to the West. You remember some few years back when, of course, there was this negotiation between the UK government and Rwanda government that those who were seeking asylum in the UK can be shipped to Rwanda. And although that deal eventually was botched with a change of government in the UK. But you find that people just want to leave. It's survival really now, because if you're in a war-torn environment, you will not be able to stay.
True.
Yeah, people have to run away from the barrels of the gun to a place of safety. At that time, they're not looking for something that is substantial. They're just wanting to make a living anyhow. And so they are moving to anywhere. But I think these are issues, really. Humanitarian issue in Africa is really becoming very huge. These are all coming from issues of poor governance, especially within the system, that is leading to very toxic political environment where, of course, opposition become very stiff and they want to get power at all costs. Because the zero-sum game we play in Africa, where the winner take all, is something that is crisis prone, really, because once you lose, you have to find a way to fight your way back and things like that, and this degenerates into crisis.
To replenish.
Yeah. So I really feel that Africans should be crisis-free because God has endowed us with so much, and those who manage the Commonwealth must do well to ensure that there's equity in terms of the distribution of wealth, and that people are not unnecessarily hungry or unnecessarily deprived from public utilities.
And it's so great that 2.6 billion has been allocated for this, as long as it gets to what the money is being allocated for. So, Business Day South Africa, DBSA denies Russian bank deal. The Development Bank of Southern Africa has denied signing agreements with its Russian counterparts. This is mostly due to the fact that there are sanctions regarding Russia, and opening of these credit lines in those national currencies are a problem.
Well, I think it was Lagarde I was listening to about 2 days ago, who was thinking of also starting the new payment system of the BRICS, see how it will work and how it can function. There's no point denying Russia is part of BRICS, and South Africa is a member of BRICS. And if at that level, this geopolitics of building a strong, very economy that can challenge the dollar happens, really, I don't think there's anything to deny. If agreement has happened, it has happened. Because, of course, we already belong to the same bloc.
Yes.
But, of course, it also shows to you a huge tie that South Africans also still have with the West and try to keep some certain things. So you have to mollify your friend or ally in such a way that, yeah, but of course, really, you have taken a decision to say you want to be part of BRICS. So what that means is that the member nations of BRICS become a stronger ally than those ones that you already know or keep. I think that sometimes we deny too many things that are quite obvious. But like they say, in every rumor you see some elements of truth. So I think the Development Bank of South Africa should come and clean. And rather than denying these things, this reality, that tomorrow, of course, people will still discover that it's true.
And they just deny it on the face of paper.
Yeah, yes, of course. Really, people know that the politics of Russia and NATO is going to be there for a very long time. And so if you have to be a friend of NATO, then you must necessarily become the enemy of Russia. So I think that is what it is. So you cannot sit on the fence. It's either you are here or you are there.
Well, Doc, it seems so. It's weird that Russia doesn't seem perturbed when these sanctions come. They seem so unshaken.
Yeah,
this is way before BRICS.
Yeah. No, BRICS has been there for some time. I think why Russia is not really perked up is the fact that nature has blessed them so well and so with good resources, and so they have so much that they have also stored up for the rainy days, and then they are relying on this. They've challenged themselves to develop to a certain level, militarily, economically, and then, of course, they're almost self-sufficient in terms of energy, and they are less dependent on Western European country. You know, but like they say, if you have resource, you know, you can walk with your head up.
Confident.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. And Russia has what almost the powers in the West do have, and therefore you cannot just wave them away with a wave of the hand. So in terms of military capability, the Americans and Russia have been struggling over supremacy for God knows when. So this is reality, and that's what happened when you are able to actually mobilize and make power available to yourself, and then other nations will respect you no matter what your size is. Russia is there. The NATO is trying to find its feet, and economy is not even making the matter easy because, of course, the economy of Europe is suffering at the moment, and they don't have so much to pull in to prosecute that war to a logical conclusion.
Yes. GNU must get to grips with country's energy transition. So it's widely agreed that the global energy sector has been in a state of economic decline, and this trend they believe will continue, although it's widely also believed that clean energy growth by them will be sufficient to drive decline in fossil fuel demand and emissions. It's something they're trying to use less of those fossil fuels, and the emissions must be reduced.
Yeah, we can talk about the emission, but I don't see how we can actually get away from the use of fossil fuel, because it will all be there, whether we like it or not. No matter what emphasis we put on clean energy, green energy, they are good initiatives, no doubt. But the truth of the matter is that I don't think that everybody is equally endowed to be able to deploy and adapt to this form of energy, depending on where you are staying on the side of the globe. So that's still be so fuel, and I think that's why recently we saw that in Saudi Arabia they were making so much investment in it, because they feel that it will not die, it will continue to be there. Beyond the petrol and the diesel that we talk about most of the time, almost all the fabrications that are done now are done from the byproducts of crude. So people will still go to mine crude for the sake of getting plastic, those vehicles, pan and the rest of it. They're all made out of it. And so except that we have to find alternative to those things. And iron smithing has given its value for too long, and I don't think that they still have the same potential today. So these are issues and challenges that the world face. So we must continue to think about fossil fuel, no matter how much green we want to be.
Right. Still here. Rest of Africa's markets narrow South Africa's lead. Financial markets across the continent have made progress, with whopping 23 countries increasing their scores, while SA tops basically, of course, not everyone, but most people know this, and their index overall is high. Mauritius, Namibia, and Botswana are closing up that gap, which is basically what this news is about, and putting them in a good position to attract capital investments from both international and local investors.
Yeah,
these are strange names. When we're not even seeing Nigeria in that group. Namibia, Mauritius, Botswana.
Yeah, I think the emphasis on the Southern African hemisphere, that's where you find these nations are located, to say that the entire economy of the Southern African states is no longer just dominated by South Africa. What that also means is that the states around South Africa, Namibia, Mauritius, and they're also doing excellently well in terms of governance. Botswana, and they are putting a lot of things in place, structure in place to drive governance. And that's what good governance brings. It brings prosperity. And the more prosperous the nations will be, the more peaceful, of course, you'll find in the environment, because poverty is actually the cause of war and insecurity.
Isn't Mauritius in the north? Anyway, interim government raises age limit to 32. Job seekers vow to fight on. So basically this, they're talking about, the issue they're having here is to make the age 35 and not 32. The interim government approved raising the maximum age limit for applying for public jobs, basically. They're hoping that the private sector don't follow suit, but they want it to go up to age 35. But however, no decision has been made regarding the retirement age. What's the age? They said has to be 35. Why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, but I really don't think there's anybody who wants to work forever.
Of course. Even if you want to, it doesn't.
Yeah, but unfortunately, is that the fortune that comes from work is not always enough to sustain people, and that's why you see old people continue to work when they're supposed to be on retirement. It's not they're doing it for leisure. It's because they don't have an economy that can support their lifestyle, having worked for a certain number of years. But I think that also would mean that when we are looking at it and you are moving age up to say, okay, if people are 35, you see, it reduces the pressure for the younger generation who are coming out, so that they cannot be stranded as they grow up, because while the older one are struggling to get a job, the one who are just leaving the system will find difficulty actually accessing some jobs. And these are strategic things that nations do to see how to keep balance between the productive demography of the environment. So if I have people who are up there and they are 35 and they have never gotten a job, so what does it do? What do you do to those people? Throw them away? Those are some questions that we need to ask. I really feel that age should not become a factor in terms of determining who gets job. It should be a function of competence or what people can do, or the capacity that people carry. And that makes a lot of sense. So by necessarily pegging age at which people can get job, you can see some people, they'll be looking for a job all their life and they have not found one. And so such people need to be helped. And if they have the mental capacity and the energy and the strength to do a kind of job, I think age should not become really a barrier for people.
I agree. Hence the question I asked. Hence that would come to an end at this point. Thank you for staying tuned to SOUQ Business Landscape. We are SOUQ News Television, and the rest of our programming continues at 8. Remember, join us for early exchange. Thank you, Doc, for being here always.
It was a pleasure to be your partner this morning on a cold, rainy day.
It's handsome, but stay here. We are SOUQ News Television.